A $1.6 billion deal between Optus and TPG could chip away at Telstra's dominance. Labor's Bill Shorten is calling it quits, and new data shows small and medium-sized business owners are struggling with their mental health. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Friday, the 6th of September, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Adam Lang.
Good morning, Michael.
Adam, the main story this morning, the competition watchdog has backed a $1.6 billion 11-year network sharing deal between Optus and TPG to boost regional coverage. Just last year, the ACCC knocked back a similar deal worth $1.8 billion between Telstra and TPG.
All right, Michael, just to go through the component parts on this one, TPG Telecom owns Vodafone, and this new arrangement will help the network triple its access to mobile sites while transferring its sites to Optus in areas without an existing Optus footprint. So TPG gets access to fewer towers than if it had done the deal with Telstra. But still, according to TPG, had the ACCC said no to the arrangement, then it would have cost them $6 billion to expand in the regional areas themselves. The arrangement will also help Optus in the 5G race, including via access to the TPG spectrum. Optus will expand its number of 5G sites in the regions from 1,500 to 2,444 by 2030. TPG's coverage will be dramatically expanded from 400,000 square kilometres to over 1 million square kilometres.
Plenty of numbers in all of that, Adam, and I know that's your happy place, just
Yes.
swimming amongst the figures. But what does it mean for customers?
It's a good deal, Michael. It means better options. The deal is being seen as a win for customers because it will give them more choices about which provider to pick from if they travel or live in rural and regional areas. Some of these spaces are only serviced by Telstra. There's only one choice at the moment. People who spend any time in the regions may now consider a completely different telco network, which could put downward pressure on plan prices. So that could be good news. More competition might also mean more innovation and focus on regional areas, which could help businesses and those who look to move out of the cities.
The other big question in all of this then, Adam, is what does it mean for Telstra's position in the market?
So, Michael, this deal starts next year and Telstra will still be the biggest mobile network, but TPG expects to double its network size, attract more customers and increase the competitive heat in the market. And on this news, Telstra's shares were down while TPG's lifted.
All right, let's take a broader look at local markets yesterday. The S&P ASX 200 closed up 0.4% to 7,982 points, which is a bit of a relief, really, for investors after what you would describe as a pretty bruising day on Wednesday.
It's been an incredible week, Michael, and yesterday IT, real estate investment trusts and financials performed strongly. However, energy and utilities and resources, they experienced steep falls. Iron ore prices hit near 2-year lows, and that was adding to the challenges. Investment management firm Challenger fell 11% following US-based Apollo Global Management's decision to sell down its stake in the business from 20.1% to 9.9%. Challenger sells Apollo products, and the two say their relationship will continue. The top performer was NextDC, up 8.4%. NextDC got a speeding ticket from the ASX and responded to those queries, saying it has nothing to announce but that it was included in a quarterly review in the US and there has been significant recent activities in the data center sector. And that is clearly pointing to the AirTrunk deal earlier this week, which may be having a halo effect on data center businesses here in Australia.
Now, Adam, thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. What's happening in overseas markets?
Michael, plenty. In the US, there's some new data ahead of the much-anticipated payroll figures later tonight. Job openings fell in July to their lowest level since 2021, down to 7.67 million, and redundancies increased. This was below all of Bloomberg's economists' estimates. Donald Trump's Truth Social has had a tough week, with shares falling sharply amid the sell-off in offshore markets. Trump is unable to sell any of his shares until later this month. His stake has fallen in value from almost $4.9 billion in March to about US $2 billion at the moment. That's over 50% in just 6 months, Michael. The Bank of Canada has cut rates by 25 basis points to 4.25 and is considering more cuts in the near future as inflation continues to moderate there. The Aussie dollar is sitting a touch under 67.2 US cents. Gold is trading at more than US $2,534, and crude oil is still under 70 US dollars a barrel.
All right, now immediately after the show, Adam, stick around for an interview that's coming up with journalist Richard Baker. It's about his new podcast, Baghdad Nights. And this is fantastic. It's such a fascinating story because it explores what happened in Australia's biggest ever corruption scandal. And this is, of course, kind of going back 20 years now. It's nearly 20 years since all of this came to light, where wheat exporter AWB Limited paid $300 million in kickbacks to Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq. And Richard Baker was a journalist at the time covering all of this. And now he is speaking to all of the key people that were involved in this story, and it is such a fascinating one. And so this conversation with Richard about how this story originated and also then how he got to know the people behind the scenes is just a great conversation.
Richard Baker is one of the country's finest journalists. He is meticulous, methodical, and he seems to find a way to get the stories where very few others can. So I remember this story, Michael, international bribery on a huge scale. I'm looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, it's a cracker. It is coming up after the show. In the meantime, Adam will be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Adam, Reserve Bank Governor Michele Bullock gave a speech yesterday afternoon where she put the blame for economic pressures back on inflation. Now, this followed Treasurer Jim Chalmers saying that high rates are smashing the economy. He said that last weekend. But Michele Bullock spoke about the impact that higher rates are actually having on lower income households. And she said, and I'll share this quote in its entirety because I think it's important. She said, although this group is fairly small overall, those in it have had to make quite painful adjustments to avoid falling behind on their mortgage repayments. This includes things like cutting back on their spending to the more essential items, trading down to lower quality goods and services, dipping into their savings or working extra hours. Some may ultimately make the difficult decision to sell their homes.
Michael, that is pretty confronting hearing it like that. Michele Bullock was speaking at about the same time as the Council of Financial Regulators handed down the latest financial stability report, and that found that 5% of borrowers right now are cash flow negative, with their income not covering their expenses. Bullock warned that if inflation isn't brought back down to the 2 to 3% target in a timely fashion, that this number will likely rise, with lower income households most at risk. But she said this isn't an overall financial stability risk. She also made it clear that getting inflation down remained the RBA's primary focus, despite the dual mandate it has to achieve full employment. And for those wondering, she chose not to weigh in on the comments earlier in the week by Treasurer Jim Chalmers.
No, I wouldn't expect her to, really. Now, Adam, we've seen some staggering numbers from new Commonwealth Bank research. More than half of small and medium-sized business owners and senior managers are saying their mental health has been affected by the economic climate of the past year.
Yeah, Michael, this is another tough one. The survey found that stress from navigating the cost of living crisis is really taking a toll on small and medium-sized enterprises. Among the sources of this stress is that about 65% of businesses had to deal with unexpected expenses at an indicative collective total of $7.3 billion. That's about $4,300 for each business in the past 12 months on average. Equipment repairs, higher supplier costs, and rising utility costs were among the most commonly cited sources of those unanticipated and clearly stressful outgoings. Commonwealth Bank Australia will launch a new partnership with mental health not-for-profit Smiling Mind to give small businesses access to programs, tools, and strategies to help them get through this challenging period. Now, anyone will be able to access the app from next month, regardless of if they are a bank customer, to get support.
Now, Adam, Labor's Bill Shorten is retiring from federal politics, having been an MP since 2007. The NDIS and Government Services Minister is probably best known for leading Labor in opposition for 6 years and 2 very bruising elections.
Yeah, 17 years, Michael. And as we know, it's virtually a full-time around-the-clock job, right?
Yeah, it's non-stop.
So Shorten has only recently secured major deals, including major NDIS reforms through Parliament and a crucial deal with the states and territories to change governance rules. He said in Canberra on Thursday that he would retire in February before the election. The press gallery has taken this as confirmation that the election will not be held before Christmas and may likely be a March election. Shorten is going to become the University of Canberra's Vice-Chancellor.
The United Workers Union is raising the alarm about the future of 8,000 workers in Queensland and New South Wales at Star Entertainment as discussions between the casino operator and its bankers continue.
The union is pushing for everyone involved to prioritise retaining the jobs of staff, saying they are facing major uncertainty and financial insecurity. Star confirmed on Thursday that it was reviewing its liquidity. The Financial Review is reporting that Star's bankers have been pushing back at its request for short-term debt, instead saying new loans should also be matched by more security over its assets and government concessions amid major cost blowouts, fines and slower trading at its major casinos. Star hasn't yet published its last financial year accounts, which saw it suspended by the ASX and the company thrown into flux. The union is pushing for Star, regulators and the government to keep the casino doors open and acknowledge that state governments have been considering the case for assistance.
Climate Change Authority Chairman Matt Keane has warned there are major barriers yet to be overcome for the government to decarbonise the electricity grid without tackling these issues head on. He says the net zero by 2050 goal is at risk.
Michael, this is a substantial new report and the first from the former New South Wales Treasurer in his new role for the federal government. Keane poured cold water on Peter Dutton's nuclear power ambitions and also warned that the Albanese government faces some major challenges. The report found that nuclear energy had a much higher cost than wind or solar energy and could take 15 to 20 years to get going, making it less viable than working harder on using existing renewable technology.
Whenever you say nuclear, do you hear Homer Simpson in your head going, it's pronounced nuclear?
I was hearing Montgomery Burns.
Oh, yes.
Same show, different voice.
Yeah, yep, pretty much the same thing. Back on track, Adam. Australia. This is a serious story, this one. Australia has the highest per capita gambling losses in the world. And when compared to peer economies, the picture is even more dire, according to a new Grattan Institute report. The average annual loss per adult here is now $1,635. It is far higher than New Zealanders at $584 and Americans at $809.
Incredible data. It's prompting the question of whether Australia should ban gambling ads completely and put loss limits on pokies and online betting. That's the Grattan Institute report's proposal, released amid government hesitancy. It also wants to see a reduction in the number of pokies in each state over time and a mandatory pre-commitment system for online gambling and pokies where people select their annual, monthly and daily loss limits. It warns that the Australian government has taken a lax approach to regulating gambling, and the result is that collectively Australians lose $24 billion a year gambling.
Turning to international news now, Adam, and Volvo has backed off from its plans to only sell EVs by 2030 in yet another sign of the cooling of the electric vehicle frenzy as challenges hit automakers.
Yeah, Michael, Volvo said back in 2017 that it would be all electric or hybrid by 2025. And then in 2021, it said it would be totally EV by 2030. The media headlines are focused on ditching this commitment. However, the EV transition isn't scrapped entirely. A close look at the statement from the carmaker shows that it still reckons 90% of what will be made by 2030 will be EV or plug-in hybrid, and that the balance still won't be entirely fossil fuel powered. Instead, it will be petrol with energy-saving technology. It has dubbed these cars, Michael, and get this for Volvo, mild hybrids. Regardless, there's been a turning in the tide lately, with Australia recently adjusting expectations of the EV fleet downwards due to challenges getting charging stations and consumer buy-in.
Adam, the Biden administration has pointed the finger directly at Vladimir Putin's inner circle for election interference in the lead up to the US presidential election.
Yeah, Michael, the US is claiming that the Russian president is undertaking a covert campaign to sway its democratic process and is bombarding Americans with political propaganda and outright misinformation, including pro-Kremlin views. This is the strongest accusation the US has ever made against Russia based on election propaganda in recent times. And among the claims is that the Russian government-funded network RT splashed millions of dollars to recruit Americans unwittingly into propaganda campaigns to undermine US election confidence and foreign policy. This clearly also relates to support from the US for Ukraine.
And finally, Adam, the spillover effects of Elon Musk's dispute over X in Brazil are continuing. His SpaceX company is now pulling employees out of the country, according to an exclusive report from the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, this is high-stakes stuff, Michael. The report said that SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell has emailed employees to advise them not to travel to Brazil for either work or fun, and they've been relocating their non-Brazilian employees working there out of the country. This has all come about after Brazil ordered X to be blocked in the country, and SpaceX Starlink was refusing to obey, though it finally said it would comply about 48 hours ago. The issue originally revolved around X's refusal to block accounts involved in a far-right insurrection in January, which resulted in the court freezing Starlink's assets and threatening significant fines.
All right, we have covered some ground today. Adam, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with journalist Richard Baker about his new podcast, Baghdad Nights, exploring exactly what happened and goes behind the scenes of Australia's biggest ever corruption scandal. Stick around for that one. It is up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 6th of September 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.